King's greatest rivalry was never about mutual respect. It wasn't even about skill. It was about two clubs who couldn't stand each other. This is the story of the two biggest King clubs from the Horizon 2 era and their bitter rivalry. King in Horizon 2 is known for having the most diverse King community. From its release in fall of 2014 to late 2016, Horizon 2 is responsible for some of the most legendary matches of all time. But one feud in particular had defined the game back when it was in its prime: N4K versus FFPC. It was a rivalry between the two most iconic King clubs in the world, a rivalry between two groups of controversial players who both saw each other as the villains of Horizon 2 King. A rivalry between the biggest and the best. FFPC's legacy in FH2 predates the feud with N4K though. See, FFPC was literally home to the best King players in the world at the time: Trio, myself, Sion, and even the FH2 King gods, Tuna Mark and DP by association, although they never officially joined the FFPC club. For the entirety of Horizon 2's main lifespan, one of those 6 players won every single tournament they participated in, and it was widely accepted that they were the best of Horizon 2. For a long time, we all played in our own separate clubs. I had THTC, a club that I revived from my PGR4 days, and Trio had NFHK, the Nasty Forza Horizon King, which housed most of Horizon 2's quickly rising talents. But eventually, the two clubs realized that coming together would help them defeat almost any odds in place in front of them, and put themselves at the top of the list of best King clubs in Forza. These days, Trio and I are pretty well known and respected King names, but that wasn't always true. There were some members of the King community who couldn't stand us, and there probably still are. There is a few reasons why people hated us: Trio's mouth, my confidence, and of course the fact that we would win in non-OP cars, throwing salt in the wound. Unlike the rest of King players back then, we took pride in using lobby cars that weren't the best in King. Other players knew that about us, and would counter it by choosing 458Ss, Veninos, Zonda Cs, or 918s, the best 4 cars in the King meta. However, this often would not work because of our general IQ for the game, knowing exactly where to be, when to be there, and knowing each other so well to the point where we'd take the crown off each other before the opponent even had a chance. Obviously, using lobby cars at the highest level is super difficult, and we were all great at doing just that. But above all the clubs that hated us, one stood above the rest. A club that may not have had the skill, but had 3 times the amount of members. Like FFPC, N4K also had developed a bit of a reputation for being the bad guys of the King community. During their reign, N4K was massive, and their leader Ariaza knew it. And that kind of rubbed some players the wrong way, especially those who knew they were better, but were constantly overshadowed due to the lack of members they had. At the start of 2015, basically anyone from our group were rejects when trying to play in an N4K lobby. This was most likely done to protect N4K's image of being the best King club, and the biggest best King club in Horizon 2. We never let it get to us, and would continue to join their open lobbies whenever the opportunity called. We weren't toxic, and always played with a certain sense of pride that others couldn't grasp or just saw as arrogance. However, these friendly lobbies would soon turn into bitter competition. See, although Trio wasn't toxic, he was never afraid to speak his mind, calling out opponents for foul play or their car choices multiple times, and even directly challenging Ariaza to matches that were never accepted. In the summer of 2015, N4K slowly began to get better in skill, and brought in a ton of more members who played King at a high level. But despite rising in quantity and even quality, N4K soon grew tired of constantly losing to us. Eventually, one of their members would quickly rise to the top of N4K as their best King player by far: Tim Racing Pro. While Tim Racing Pro may have respected us as King players, the in-game hatred was almost instant when he defeated our lobby cars using a Veneno, one of the top 4 cars in the game as mentioned earlier, then proceeded to gloat about it. Sometimes beef is fake and people just get a kick out of playing the tough guy role. That was not the case with FFPC and N4K. After TRP, or Tim Racing Pro, came on the scene, it was basically a war anytime our 2 club names would appear in the same lobby. However, the rivalry really took a turn when someone from N4K got me IP banned. causing me to move from my dad's to my mom's in order to play online again. Everyone knew that when a player from either club joined the other's lobby, they'd be bringing a friend or two with them to help even the odds, so to say. Basically letting everyone know that these matches were no longer friendlies. And while the two clubs were still looked at as the best in the world, FFPC was still on top due to being more top-heavy in big names. Inver.K's members were definitely improving as well, but by that time the skill gap was already too far for them to comfortably call themselves the best. FFPC had beaten Inver.K in more head-to-heads and had eliminated their members firsthand whenever they would join a tournament. In early 2017, more than 2 years after their rivalry began, it was looking more like the same. By this time, FFPC no longer a club after moving on to the next Horizon game, Horizon 3. But the members were still all friends and played regularly as if nothing had changed. Seeing FFPC in gave Inver.K the necessary confidence they needed, and they felt they were now #1 by default. But remember how I said Trio was never afraid to speak his mind? Well, yeah, Trio got into it with an old FFPC member who left and went to Inver.K when FFPC moved on, and he couldn't accept the fact that Inver.K was still calling themselves the best on Horizon 2, even despite moving on to 3. This would set the stage for the biggest and final FFPC vs Inver.K battle ever. The battle at the Industrial.